You probably couldn't tell what kind of engine it was. Is it a V8, a V6, or even a single-cylinder engine? Well, what if there is a map where engines of the same types live in the same neighborhood? Today, we will draw that map and see if it actually helps us tell the engine apart. In math, this map is called a vector space and the neighborhood is called a vector subspace. But before we can map a city, we need an address system to locate each engine sound, or in other words, we need a vector. One way to factorize a sound is with a Fourier transform, where each frames become a stack of frequencies in magnitudes, like writing down the exact GPS coordinates for every building in the city. And that's huge. In normal FFT, the dimension can get up to around 500 to 1000. In spaces that large, the data can become sparse, distances bunch up, and noise gets louder. So, we switch to another way, which is MFCC, which is more specialized in human hearing capabilities. We split the audio into several windows, group the frequencies on a mel scale, take the logs and summarize the shape into 20 numbers. Then we track how the shapes move and how that movement accelerates. As a result, we get a 60 dimensions data, a tidy address that's easy to search but still captures what makes the sound distinctive. Now that we've got clean addresses, let's fold the map. With PCA, we get a lower dimensional subspace by folding the 60D map down to 5 directions that still capture about 92 to 94% of the original variance and details. But is a folded map reliable? To test the stability of our subspace, we tried to resample the clips, redrawing each PCA and measuring the principal angle between the old subspace and the new one. If the angle is small and relatively narrow, the subspace keeps the same components, thus stable. That's what we see for V6, V8, inline 4 and single cylinder, where the median is around 13 to 15 degrees. But if the angle is larger or the distribution is wide, the subspace twists or stretches when you change the data, thus not stable, which is what happened in inline 6 with 26 degrees median. Stable classes usually means generalized and stay interpretable, while unstable ones need more data, better conditioning, or a different rank. Now, how are we going to differentiate the subspace? Now we can measure the principal angle between two subspaces to discriminate them. If the angle is small, those subspace points almost in the same directions. Their sounds share structures, so it's more likely to mix them up. But if the angle is large, they point in the different directions, their sounds are distinct, so it should be easy to separate them. And from this heat map, we can see that the closest pair are V8 with single cylinder. These two subspaces overlap the most, so we expect more confusions there. And the most separated one is V6 with inline 4. These are far apart, so we expect very few mix-ups. Now let's test the subspace with a simple distance-based classifier and see what happens. For each clip, we project the 60-dimension vector onto each class 5 principal components and ask which subspace is the closest. The class with the smallest miss or the biggest fit wins. Across folds, we get around 25% accuracy, which is not a huge improvement compared to 20% accuracy by random guessing. But permutation test shows that this gain is statistically real, a modest lift, so the subspace helps, but it doesn't solve everything. Now, look at the key pattern here. Look at the confusion matrix. Most mix-ups happens exactly between the subspace that were closest in our angle map, which is V8 and single cylinder. So the geometry predicts the mistakes that we see. But now, maybe you're wondering, what do this subspace looks like? We try to understand the subspace by inverting the principal components for each class back to the spectrum. What's interesting is that we can see different patterns between each different principal components across the classes. For the first principal components, the spectrum is moving towards the mid and high frequencies, as you can see in the graph. And for the other components, like the second and third principal components, it's mostly redistribute the energy and changes the sound contrast, which for some focus on low frequency and the other focus on the high frequencies. Other interesting thing here is that how engine configuration related to the principal components. As you can see, V6 and V8 were almost identical, as well as inline 4 and inline 6, which is similar with some differences. Also, the single cylinder spectrum is pretty unique compared to the rest. Also, a quick centroid check on the reconstructed class average shows that the lowest frequency centroid is inline 4, followed by inline 6, V6, V8, and single cylinder. This is somewhat similar to the actual physics theory, where fewer cylinders tends to sound brighter, but it isn't perfectly captured here. So to recap, we transform each engine sound into a 60-dimensional vector, then fold it down with a PCA into 5-dimensional subspace, and it turns out mostly stable, moderately discriminative both from the subspace angle analysis and the 25% nearest subspace accuracy, and we can even interpret what each component means. If you want to explore the full experiment, check out the GitHub link below, and thanks for watching.